So, I have a bit of a long history with the Beldum family and specifically with Shiny Beldum. When I was a teenager, we used to go to rural Ireland to stay with my grandmother for the holidays, and this was in the mid to late 2000s, so there really wasn't a ton of things to do, and we definitely didn't have the internet or anything like that. One summer, I brought with me my Game Boy Advance, I think that's what I had at the time, and a copy of Pokemon Ruby. Now, bear in mind that I have been a Pokemon fan for all of my life, pretty much since I got Pokemon Blue for Christmas back in 1999, but I had obviously taken some breaks over the years where I hadn't played Pokemon for a few years here and there. You know, I thought I was too cool and things like that. But of course, Pokemon always found its way back, even now that I'm almost 30 years of age. Back then, shiny Pokemon were extremely elusive. The odds of getting one were 1 in 8,192, which is actually so ridiculously hard when you didn't have things like overworld shiny sprites or horde encounters or any way to really increase the odds as far as I'm aware. Bizarrely enough, I had actually found 2 random shiny encounters in my Pokemon Emerald. But for those of you that don't know, Emerald has its own cursed RNG where sometimes you can have really lucky copies that I think it's tied to your save file and frame rates. I don't really know a lot about it, but some copies it's a lot easier to get shinies than others. And I definitely must have had a lucky copy because I found a shiny Zubat in Granite Cave and a shiny Numel near the desert area. Bit of a story on that one, which I won't get into today, maybe a story for another time, but a friend of mine actually stole my shiny Numel and it was devastating. Anyway, back to the summer, I had brought my Game Boy Advance and a copy of Pokemon Ruby with me, and since I had nothing to do and no one to hang out with, I thought, why don't I try and hunt for a shiny Pokemon? I then went and looked across all of the routes in the game, and I considered using strategies like Illumise and Sweet Scent to find Pokemon a little quicker, or I think you can hop with the Acrobike as well, which makes random encounters just a little bit quicker. But even though I'd done some research, I found that with every route there was at least one Pokemon where I didn't want to have shiny. Like, say if I went for a shiny Bagon, there was a decent chance that I would find a Solrock or a Zubat. And like, a shiny is a shiny, they would be great to have, but if I'd gotten a second shiny Zubat, I definitely would have been disappointed, considering that it would probably take me tens of hours, if not more. I also think the Masuda method didn't exist back then, and even if it did, I had no way to get a foreign language version, so really the only way left for me to hunt was to find a shiny by soft resetting. In Ruby and Sapphire, you have a few soft reset options. Obviously, any of the starters would be an excellent pick, they all have great shiny forms. You also had things like Castform, Kecleon, and probably a few more that I'm forgetting, but the one that immediately caught my eye and became my obsession was Shiny Beldum. Not only is Metagross such a cool Pokemon, you know, one that's the ace Pokemon of Stephen Stone and the pseudo legendary, it also is one of the coolest shiny forms of all time. I actually recently put up a poll on YouTube asking my subscribers what was the best Hoenn shiny out of my top 4 favorites, which are Ludicolo, Metagross, Milotic, and Breloom, I believe. And Metagross won by a landslide, so I'm glad that other people have great taste as well. So there it was, I had decided Shiny Beldum is what I needed to get, and I had a summer to do it, so I started hunting. I wish I'd kept track of the number of encounters I did, but all I know is it took me weeks and weeks of endlessly resetting. It got to the point that my hands were constantly cramping. I was even having these auditory hallucinations of the Moss Deep City music when I wasn't resetting, like when I was trying to sleep at night. I must have been a little insane because I specifically remember doing this in my bedroom with the curtains drawn on sunny days. I wasn't even watching TV or anything else playing in the background because I really didn't want to accidentally soft reset if I did find that shiny after all those hours. Anyway, after weeks and weeks of this, one day I did finally get my dream shiny. The shiny silver Beldum had suddenly replaced all of those blue ones that had been in my party, and any fear I had that I wouldn't notice it or that I would accidentally soft reset over the shiny just instantly dissolved. It was so incredibly striking. I think I saved like 15 times in a row afterwards just to be sure that I'd gotten it, and I was so ecstatic. I remember running around the house telling everyone all about it, and even though they probably hadn't a clue what I was talking about, I'm sure they were happier for me. This must have been like 15 years ago by now, so this was a super long time ago, but I'll never forget the time that I successfully completed my first shiny hunt by soft reset, and I think this is the only one I ever did by soft reset. And this hunt, I think it unlocked a lifelong love for shiny Pokemon hunting, and the grind never stops. I'm actually super glad it's gotten a lot easier to get shiny Pokemon over the years, so that other people can get the same kind of feeling of satisfaction that I got with this Beldum. But, you know, it was crazy back then. There was just no way to increase the odds. Unfortunately, with the Beldum, I have no idea what actually happened to it. I know I lost a copy of Pokemon Ruby at some point over the years. I think I probably left it like in rural Ireland, somewhere at my grandmother's house, or maybe down the back of a couch somewhere. I have no idea, and even if I had it, the battery is probably long since run dry. I don't even know if the game would work. Anyway, flash forward to the end of 2023, the Indigo Disk was coming out. I saw that Beldum was in the Pokedex, and I knew that I had to hunt for a shiny Beldum. I've actually put off progressing the Indigo Disk DLC because I have been really busy in work and I've tried to make some other videos, but getting a shiny Beldum is just one of my priorities and something I knew I had to do. Finally, after 2 sandwiches, which isn't even that long, it's like 40 minutes or something, I had found that shiny silver Beldum. I was a bit worried I wouldn't be able to distinguish it from the normal ones because the polar biome and the snow and the reflective surface of Beldum, you know, you could get confused from the shadows and the lighting and things like that, but the shiny Beldum is just as striking as the one I had hunted for so many years ago. Catching it actually wasn't so bad either, even though Beldum is notoriously difficult to catch. I was able to use my Goldengo to weaken it with Astonish, and Goldengo is also immune to all of Beldum's tackles, so, you know, it took a while, but I got there eventually with some Ultra Balls. After a quick little test with the Synchro machine, I of course had to evolve Beldum, first into Metang, and then finally into Metagross. From here, I proceeded to test it out with the Synchro machine. It was a bit weird to see Metagross floating everywhere, kind of like a spacecraft or a UAP, when I was controlling it, but otherwise when it's sent out the Pokeball, it does a blend of this floating and these spider-like land movements, which is more in line with how I thought Metagross would move. Anyway, it's really cool to see it move around in the overworld. Game Freak did a really great job here capturing how Metagross moves about and just bringing so much character to it. All in all, this was a super satisfying hunt to do, and I hope that my long lost shiny Beldum, wherever it is, can go and find some solace, knowing that I've moved on and found a new shiny Beldum all these years later.